Hello, welcome to IAS Factor. Now we are going for the next important ancient India revision, and the next important topic that we are discussing today for this revision is post-Mauryan period, because we already discussed the Mauryan period. So the next important phase will be the post-Mauryan period. So this is the Indo-Greek architecture that you can see in the regions of Gandhara during this time, and this is a sample representation of the king Kanishka. It is a sample representation of the king Kanishka during that time. So all of this is a mix of the Greek, Persian. It's a mix of Greek, Persian, Roman architecture that is seen in the Gandhara or the Indo-Bactrian region. That's called the Bactria. It's called the Bactrian region. So we need to find a lot of information regarding all these aspects. So Kanishka is one of the most important kings of this time. And he convened the fourth Buddhist council in Kashmir. He convened the fourth Buddhist council in Kashmir. So remember the Buddhist councils that we learned. And so let's start the session with me, Arjun R Shankar. Let's immediately go into the session. Here we go. So post-Mauryan period. So this is another important example of Indo-Greek king. So Indo-Greek king. So why do you think these people are here? Indo-Greek king. We need to understand all these aspects in this session. So post-Mauryan period, let me also make it very clearly. As I told, after the death of Ashoka, the most popular weak successors came in, and after some time, after Ashoka's death, there was a complete reliance on the promotion of Buddhism to different parts, like Mahendra, Sanghamitra, everybody, his daughter, son, everybody is preaching Buddhism. Later on, weak successors came in, and finally the last ruler was Brihadratha. So we are discussing about the last ruler called as the Brihadratha, and finally his general Pushyamitra Shunga killed him, and finally took over and started a new dynasty called as the Shunga dynasty. So remember, that is what is called as the Shunga dynasty. So let me make it here clear. So starting from Brihadratha, we'll start from Brihadratha. He was killed, and finally that is how they began the Shunga. He was killed by his general Pushyamitra Shunga. That is why they started the Shunga dynasty. And later on you can see another, these are the domestic wave. This is the domestic wave. When you say the post-Maurya, means anything that has happened after the Mauryas. And then there is another kingdom which is called as the Kanva. And there is the Kanvas. And this is the domestic wave. But after Brihadratha, you should know there is another group of people coming into the Indian scene, which are called as, I will actually make it a small acronym called as Iksa Paku. I've made it very simple for you to remember this. It's called the Iksa Paku, which means Indo-Greek, that they are called the Indo-Greeks, the Shakas, the Parthians, and the Kushanas. So they are all people who came from outside. So remember, let's take an understanding about the map of India. When you look at this whole subcontinent, you see that the people used to come from this region, and people used to come here. So when it was the time of Ashoka, remember, when it was the time of Ashoka, anybody who came to this region will not dare to enter the Indian region and start occupying this region, because there was a strong empire held by Ashoka. So any attempts to cross the borders and get into India will be thwarted by the strong forces or the central government done by Ashoka. But after Ashoka, there was weak successor, means small petty principalities. That is how the historians use the word. It's a petty principality, small kingdoms used to come here. So, and Shungas and Kanvas were focused on region level. So this created a wave, because a lot of people, the Iksa-Pakus, the Indo-Greeks, Shakas, Parthians, and Kushans, found it easy. They found it very easy to come here. And there was one more reason. Here on the side, there was the Great Wall. The Great Wall of China was getting built, and obviously the Shakas and this people, it was difficult for them to survive in that region. So either ways, people were pushing them to other places. So all these people came here. So Shakas, they are the most deadliest people out of this. Indo-Greek, Shakas, Parthians, Kushans, they are the most deadliest people out of this. So the complete structure was changing. So they had no other place to go. All of them came to India. But since there was very weak rulers here, all of them's access became very easy. They all came in here, and studying Indo-Greek, Shakas, Parthians, Kushans, reading about them, that is the post-Mauryan period. So we have to know Shungas, Kanvas, Indo-Greek, Shakas, Parthians, Kushans, etc. So this is the style, and each of them ruled India, and they made some achievements, and most of this we devote this area, the post-Mauryans, especially the Indo-Greek, Shakas, Parthians, Kushans, towards the art and architecture. In art and architecture, this is the most important thing called the Gandhara school of art and the Mathura school of art. So they were all most of them were patrons of Buddhism. So the classic examples of Gandhara school of art and Mathura school of art can be seen here. And also understand, during the Taxila or the Gandhara region, the Afghanistan region, remember this region coming from this area. You know that in 326 BC, get this correct, Alexander invaded India, 326 to be precise, and in Battle of Hydaspes, Porus was defeated and Alexander came to India, and he went back. And when he went back, he left the satraps. I told you in the previous session that when he say he left the satraps, or satrapy means he left the governors and the system here. So most of the people, you should understand, a lot of people who came from Greek, a lot of those people did not go back to Macedonia, from where they came from. They did not go back to Macedonia, Alexander's place, or Greece. They stayed here. They stayed here in this region called as Bactria. They stayed in this region. They started intermixing with the local population. They started mixing with the local population, and that is the people who later on became called as the Indo-Greeks. So remember Indo-Greeks, and who introduced gold coins in India. Even the NCERT says, many of the books say that gold coins were launched in India by Kushans. But you should know the gold coins before Kushans was launched by the Indo-Greeks, but the metallic purity was low. The metallic purity of the gold coins of the Indo-Greeks was less. Kushans had a higher gold metallic purity. So Shakas, Parthians, all of these are different people who came to India. So let's quickly understand, and before we move on to this, also understand, this is the region why the architecture that revolved or grew in this region called as the Indo-Greek region is the Gandhara region, and the Buddha that you see in this Gandhara looks like Zeus or the Greek gods, because the style in this region is more of Greeks and Roman. That is why it is called as Greco-Roman, which I'll discuss all of this in the art and culture class more, and let's get into the important facts immediately. So we need to pick up the facts. I hope that you got an idea. So let's start the session with the important facts, and let's go. 1 second, let me get my cursor correct. 1 second. So I think I'll do it manually. So what is the next important is, let's understand the transition from Mauryan rule. After Ashoka's death, 232 BC, the Mauryan Empire fragmented. The 185 BC, the last Mauryan king Brihadratha was overthrown by Pushyamitra Shunga, a Brahmana and a Mauryan general. India broke into regional kingdoms and foreign rules soon. So finally, that is the most important things that we have to learn here. So there was a transition from Mauryan rule. So remember the Pushyamitra Shunga and the Brahmana, he was a Mauryan general and major successor dynasties and foreign powers. Know about the Shungas. 185 to 75 BC, Pushyamitra Shunga, who revived Brahmanical orthodoxy. So this man created a Brahmanical revival before Guptas, because Mauryan period was completely dominated for Buddhism. So he brought the Hinduistic concept back. He performed Ashwamedha Yajna, countering Ashoka's non-violence, because a horse was released. You know what do you mean by Ashwamedha? A horse is released and finally battle follows. He supposedly said to have persecuted Buddhist people. It is a highly debatable thing, because people say he mass murdered Buddhist people, but other archaeological evidence suggests that he built a lot of stupas and he gave a lot of support to the Buddhist people. So anyway, he patronized Sanskrit Vedic rituals and the revival of Varna order. So everything that you could have seen in a later Vedic period was revived by Pushyamitra Shunga. That is called as the Brahmanical revivalism. So Pushyamitra, but there are Pataliputra remained a center, but political authority weakened. That is something we have to note. And after Pushyamitra Shunga, there is the Kanva dynasty, 73 to 28 BC. 73, and it's slowly coming. And the founder is Vasudeva Kanva, a minister who usurped the Shunga throne. His capital was also Pataliputra. A short-lived dynasty with limited territorial control. Eventually, they were overthrown by the Shatavahanas. So here comes the next important four. We discussed about the Shungas, we discussed about the Kanvas, and in this side, we discussed about the Iksa-Paku, or the Indo-Greek Shakas, Parthians and Kushans. And over the downline, we could see the Deccan area was dominated by the Shatavahanas. Very, very important kingdoms we need to understand. I'll tell you about Shatavahanas also. So Kanvas, Shatavahanas, these are the important people. And slowly moving on after the Shatavahanas, we'll actually have an idea regarding the Kanvas, and then the Indo-Greeks comes. They're called as the Yavanas, because Greeks means Yavana or Yavana Priya. All are Greek related words. Yavana Priya are all coming from the Greek rooted words. They invaded from Bactria, Afghanistan, and ruled parts of northwest India. The famous ruler is Menander or Melinda, who converted to Buddhism. The very famous book called Milinda Panho is also regarding to this. The book was also important. It's a book called Milinda Panho, means questions of Menander. Finally, Nagasena or Nagarjuna, there is a record which is happening, a debate happening, and finally Nagasena convinces Menander to be a Buddhist. So he introduced Hellenistic elements in the Indian art. That means completely Greco-Roman style art elements were brought by this. So know about Indo-Greeks, and later Scythians or the Shakas. The Scythians or the Shakas. They are the Central Asian nomads who displaced Indo-Greeks, ruled Western and Central India. The famous king of Shakas is Rudra Daman. He is known for the Junagadh rock inscription, the first high classical Sanskrit royal inscription. Please remember, this is asked, know about the inscription Rudra Daman and the Junagadh rock inscription. A classical example of the first Sanskrit royal inscription. And these are all UPSC PYQ questions. So know about Rudra Daman and Junagadh rock inscription. So Junagadh and Rudra Daman, he is a Scythian or Shaka. And he repaired the famous Sudarshana Lake in Gujarat, show public welfare focus. He also patronized Sanskrit, literature and art. So Sanskrit, Hindu revival, all this are important. He repaired the Sudarshana Lake. All of this is asked in the UPSC. They're all PYQs. So remember, they can ask it anyway. They can frame the question anytime. So Shakas and Scythian, know about the Rudra Daman and the important Sudarshana Lake repair. Now let's go into the next important content. Here is yes, the Parthians. Coming in the Parthians, or they are also called as the Pahlavas. They came after Shakas ruled Iksa-Paku. That is why Parthians. They came after the Shakas and ruled parts of Punjab and Afghanistan. The most notable ruler is the Gondopharnes, mentioned in Christian tradition of Saint Thomas. By this time, Christianity is also in the forefront. Imagine, we have already come through BC, come a long way from BC, and finally we read AD, like we say BCE and CE. And finally Christianity has come in, and after 7th century, even after 700 years later, Islam is coming. So Gondopharnes, mentioned in Christian tradition as Saint Thomas, is mentioned. So this is the time when you think Saint Thomas visited India. So they have also asked this question: when Saint Thomas visited India, who was the Indian king? It was Gondopharnes, and the Parthians were ruling here. So they were descendants. They were actually coming from the Persian Iranian region. They had limited cultural influence compared to Shakas and Kushans. So know about the Parthians, and they had the Pahlavas also. So know in detail about them. And the next important thing regarding the Parthians is the Kushans. Next is the Kushans. They are the most important people, and they are nomadic origin. The Yui tribe conquered North India and extended to Central Asia. The greatest ruler is Kanishka, AD 78. So now you can see 78 to 120, now it is AD. And he founded the Shaka era AD 78, the Shaka era, maybe defeated. I think it's a commemorative defeat. It's a commemoration of the defeat that they done. So Shaka era was created. He controlled India, Kashmir, Mathura, and Central Asia, and he was a patron of Mahayana Buddhism. Convened the fourth Buddhist council in Kashmir. He supported art, medicine, literature, etc. Everything during this time. You can remember this. So Kanishka is one of the greatest ruler of this time. And what about the rise of Shatavahanas in the Andhras? They are the Andhras. So when you look at this whole Indian subcontinent at this point in time, you can see the Iksapakus were actually from this, and the Shungas and Kanvas were actually in this Pataliputra region. Shungas, Kanvas. In the northern India, Iksapaku people are contributing. In the south of India, in the Deccan region, we have the Andhras, the Deccani Andhras. So that is the important thing that we have to remember. The Andhras, first major contemporaries of Kushans. They are contemporaries of Kushans, founded by Simukha. They can be asked in the match the following. And the most powerful ruler of the Shatavahana is the Gautami Putra Shatakarni. You know why these Shatavahanas are more important? Because they have this matrilineal style. Because most often when you learn about the Indian society, we learn about the patriarchal or the patrilineal system of inheritance. But now you can understand they are matrilineal. They are basically, we give examples of matrilinealism and we quote Shatavahanas because they use the mother's name first. Gautami Putra Shatakarni. So that means they give importance to mother and women. So described in Nasik Prashasti by his mother Gautami Balashri. They defeated the Shakas and claimed to restore the Varna order. So the Nashik Prashasti is by Gautami Balashri and her son Gautami Putra Shatakarni. So he's one of the most popular rulers. So let's understand that they introduce coins with bilingual legends, patronize Prakrit language and Buddhism, though also supported Brahmanas. So everything, they supported Prakrit, Buddhism, Brahmanas, supported trades and guilds, Buddhist stupa like Amaravati. Amaravati stupa is very, very important. We learn it about the Amaravati school of architecture, Gandhara school, Mathura school, and what is Amaravati school of architecture. So art and culture, definitely I'll explain, but I'm just giving you a few idea to have a glimpse of this. The Gandhara art, Greco-Buddhist and Mathura school of art, and the construction of stupa, chaityas and viharas, notably at Sanchi, Barhat and Amaravati, and the Mahayana Buddhism and Bodhisattvas. You know who are Bodhisattvas. So architecture, we'll have to discuss all these aspects. So what about the language? Sanskrit gained prominence with texts like the Manusmriti codifying social laws. Sanskrit was still in place, and you can see Prakrit was also there. They used in inscription and literary works. So note some of the literary works you should remember, they can be asked in the exam. Mahabhashya by Patanjali. It's a commentary on Panini's grammar. So Mahabhashya by Patanjali is a comprehensive commentary on Panini's grammar. And when you see Panini, always remember the book called Ashtadhyayi. Always remember the book called as Ashtadhyayi of Panini, the Sanskrit book. So it's a Mahabhashya by Patanjali is a commentary on that. Milinda Panho, dialogues between Menander and Nagasena. It discussed Buddhist philosophy. So Sanskrit was used, Prakrit was used, Mahabhashya, Ashtadhyayi is Panini is not actually, I'm just quoting Mahabhashya is also quoting all this. And the chronological overlap. Let's understand some of the title Devaputra used by Kushan kings like Kanishka means son of God, makes early signs of divine kingship in India. So it's very much similar to the Chinese emperors who believe that they are the sons of God. Exactly like the Chinese emperors, Indian, the Kushans people, they took the title Devaputra, the son of the God. Now let's talk about Shunga revival of Brahmanism. I already told this point. Mahabhashya is again classical Sanskrit. Mahabhashya is also a part of this, so you can easily remember this. And now moving on, Brahmanism is already discussed. What about the guild or Shreni? After the later Vedic period, I've already narrated in detail about the guild and Shreni, association of various professions like carpenter, blacksmith, goldsmith, everything. So guilds, they expanded their coverage. Guilds had their own seals, very important. They had their own laws and they had their own financial autonomy. They also acted as banks, lending to traders, temples, and even kings. So guilds became very, very popular during this time. Initially, they had their own rules and regulation. They had their own. They could even impart punishments, but the ultimate power rested with the king or the supreme authority who could decide on punishment. But now they expanded. They started lending money. They started lending money to traders, temples, and even kings. So they even sponsored religious endowments like cave donations at Karla and Nasik. So Karla cave and Nasik, they're all caves. They're all caves that we have to remember in this. And next is regarding, we have to know about the guild. Shreni is already discussed. Next point, we have to remember about the women in society. The use of matronomics by Shatavahanas, Gautami Putra, Vasishti Putra, may indicate greater royal legitimacy through female line, prominent among the Deccan. So women, definitely, since we talk about Shatavahanas, Vasishti Putra or Gautami Putra shows matronomics, the women, mother's name in the name. What about the trade networks and Roman contact? They had contact with the Rome. The ports like Brigukacha, Kaveri Pattanam, Arikamedu are all important ports. They're all PY, they've all asked in the exam. Brigukacha, Kaveri Pattanam and Arikamedu. Arikamed, Kaveri Pattanam. Spices, ivory, textiles, gold, wine, glassware, everything was imported from this. And though Buddhist structures dominate archaeological record, there was early Shaiva and Vaishnava activity also. You can see the sculptures of Shiva, Vishnu appear in Mathura, and also Krishna and Skanda or Kartikeya or Muruga is also found here. So after, when initially it was Indra and Varuna, and afterwards there came other rulers, other kings, other gods like Prajapati, 33 grades of God, and later on we had the gods and goddesses like Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. All of these concepts came only later after. So you can see religious pluralism can be found, because even in this heavy Buddhist time you can see Hindu statues and figurines. So you cannot say that Kushan period are all entirely devoted to the Buddha. They were entirely devoted to Buddhists. No, you even had examples of Jain. You even had examples of Hindu like Shiva, Vishnu and Kartikeya. So never feel that it was exclusively Buddhist. No, that is wrong. Now let's move to the next important content here. So what is the next important thing? Let's have an idea about the I think my mouse gets stuck. So 1 second. Let me again manually move it. So let's move on to the next important content. Here we go. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. This needs to be understood in a detail, because sometimes I've seen this book depicted, or sometimes I've seen the important reference of this. This is a Greco-Roman trading guide from the 1st century that explicitly mentioned Indian ports. So remember the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. It's a trade manual. It talks about Barigaza. What is Barigaza? It's Bharuch, Muziris, Arikamedu. So just imagine, even in Kerala, Muziris is the Muziris Banale, the famous. It is the famous city in Kerala called as the Kodungalur. It is the Kodungalur, and it talks about exports like spices, gems, ivory, muslin import like gold, wine, coral, glassware. All of this stands very important in this regard. And again, Taxila or Taxila as a cosmopolitan hub. So you can see that Taxila flourished under Indo-Greeks and Kushan as a cross center. Greek medicine, Buddhist learning, Hellenistic sculpture, everything. Taxila became an international city. It was a globalized city in that time. Imagine, it was a globalized city in that time. And the use of Kharoshthi script. So you have heard about the language Prakrit, Sanskrit, Brahmis, all scripts like it's already discussed Prakrit, Sanskrit, Artha Magadhi in Jain time. So what is Kharoshthi script and Brahmi? Northwestern inscription. The Shakas, Indo-Greeks, the Kharoshthi script was used alongside Brahmi. So one thing you need to understand, what it is written right to left. So writing like just like you write Arabic from right to left, you write like this. So this is what is called as the Kharoshthi script. Brahmi means like writing English. You write like this. From left to right, you write like this, that becomes Brahmi. Have a clarity, Kharoshthi is right to left, Brahmi is left to right. And when you write Kharoshthi, Brahmi, Kharoshthi, Brahmi, Kharoshthi, Brahmi, this becomes Boustrophede and style. Like people say that linguists say that Indus Valley civilization might have a Boustrophede and script. That is it. So always get this point. And patronage by non-Buddhists. Some Shaka and Shatavahana rulers were not Buddhist at all, but still funded Buddhist caves, stupas and monastery. Take an example. Nahapana, he's a Shaka ruler, gave grants to Buddhist institution despite being personally Brahmanical. So even though they were Brahmins, doesn't mean that they completely gave patronage. So remember the name of the king Nahapana. Nahapana is a Shaka ruler, gave personal grants. So remember Nahapana was also an example for this. And the next important example that you can see here is, so remember that. Okay, let me do it again manually. So the next one is regarding the first use of the title Maharajadi Raja. So you can understand the first use of the title Maharajadi Raja. The Kushans, especially Kanishka, used the title Maharajadi Raja, that means Kings of Kings, a title later adopted by the Guptas. Later Guptas took it. So first you read about the Kushan people, the sons Devaputra or Devaputras, and later on they took the title Maharajadi Raja, the King of Kings. So all this are the Kushans people, they take this, there are examples where they take these things. So that was one. And Yavanas in the south. So have an idea, what do you mean by the Yavanas in the south? Yavana means Greek. Greek traders and settlers were present in Tamilagam reference in the Sangam text. So they lived in the port cities like Kaveri Pattanam and engaged in trade. So you can even confirm the Greek reference of trade even in Tamil Nadu. That sounds a really good thing. So even there are trade systems in Tamil Nadu. And what is land grants? What is the concept of the land grants? So that is called as a Brahmadeya grant, which we will find later in the Gupta period. When we learn Gupta period, you give the land for something. It is the Brahmadeya grants. So this type of grants is not coming in Gupta period for the first time. It is actually coming in the Shatavahana period itself. This is something that we have to learn. So this is coming in the Shatavahana period itself. And next is the Indo-Greek coins that you can understand, the portraits of kings on one side and Indian symbols like Lakshmi or elephant on the reverse. Just imagine, king on one side and the Lakshmi or elephant on the reverse. They use the Indo-Greek coins. The Kushan coins had the Iranian deities, Mitra, Nana, showing overlap with West Asia. So Indo-Greek coins had Hindu depictees and Kushan coins had Irani deities also. So that is something that you have to know this. And moving on to the next important content here. So next is regarding the Shatavahanas. So know something about the most important points. So 1st century to the 3rd century, large part of the Deccan were Shatavahanas. They are known as Andhras, founded by Simuka. Their capital initially was the Pratisthana, the modern Paithan in Maharashtra, and later on Amaravati. The peak under Gautami Putra Shatakarni and Pulamavi. These are some of the rulers' names. So no, Pratisthana was the capital which became Paithan, and later on Gautami Putra Shatakarni is something that you can see. The most popular rulers can be attributed to this. And who are the next? The Gautami Putra Shatakarni. He was the most powerful ruler. He defeated the Shakas, Yavanas and Pahallavas, means Shakas the Indo-Greeks and the Parthians. He defeated everybody. He called himself the Eka Brahmana and patron of Brahmanism. His achievements are recorded in the Nasik Prasasti by his mother Gautami Balashri, which is already we already discussed that. Next is Vasishta Putra. Vasishti, you can see Vasishti Putra Pulamavi. Maritime trade, coins, etc. So again, all metronymics, mothers' names are added. Yajnasri Shatakarni. So Shatakarni, Pulamavi, and Gautami Putra Shatakarni are all Shatavahana kingdoms. They had an exact, like very, very similar to the Mauryan model or centralized with strong bureaucracy. They also used Prakrit language and inscription. Land grants to Brahmins and Buddhist monks were common. So they gave lands to everybody. That is why we have Hinduism as well as Buddhist support given by the Shatavahanas. And that is something that we'll understand here. And what they are patrons of Buddhist and Brahmanism. So both Amravati, Nagarjuna Konda, Prakrit are all Sanskrit. Everything can be found in this period. So what is the most important thriving aspect that we can remember is they had agriculture, trade, important trading center Pratisthana, Tagara and Kalyani. So they're all Python in Maharashtra. So all this region, Pratisthana, Tagara and Kalyani, they had trade with Roman Empire, which is evident from the Roman coins. They had issued coins in lead, copper and silver. They had Prakrit, Tamil or Prakrit or Brahmi. They had all type of coins, Prakrit, Brahmi and all of this. And moving on to the other important content here. So art and architecture, definitely we learn about the Amaravati school of architecture in this. So it has to be clearly understood. So that is art and architecture, which has to be from that perspective. So which is very important in this region. We need to know what about the Amaravati school of art. All these concepts comes in this area. So I think these are the most important things about post-Maurya. Now after this, after Maurya, a big kingdom is coming, that is the Guptas, which we learn in detail. Okay, thank you.